Doug Ford loves talking about how he's going to save taxpayers money.
We're going to put a platform that's going to respect the taxpayers. We start respecting the taxpayers. Respecting the taxpayers. No, respect the taxpayers.
But so far, the way that he has said he plans to do that doesn't exactly add up.
My first act as Premier, we will use every tool at the disposal of the Ontario government to remove the $6 million man in the entire board of Hydro One.
So the first issue with that is that the Premier can't actually fire the CEO of Hydro One. In 2015, Kathleen Wynne partially privatized the company to help pay for new transit and infrastructure projects. So, while the government is still the largest shareholder in the company, it doesn't have the same power that it used to. The board can fire the CEO, so Ford could fire the board, replace the board, and then get that new board to fire the CEO. But there's a catch. Firing the CEO would entitle him to a $10.7 million severance package. And according to Hydro One, it's shareholders, not customers, who are paying for the bulk of executive salaries. So, would firing the CEO and the board actually do anything to lower hydro costs? No.
We are going to provide a tax credit so that those earning minimum wage will pay zero tax.
So Ford claims this would give a full-time worker making $14 an hour about $800 more a year. Sounds pretty good, right? But Ford fails to mention that he also plans to freeze the minimum wage at $14 instead of raising it to $15 next year. So which is actually better for minimum wage earners? A $1 hourly raise or not having to pay income taxes? Well, someone smarter than me crunched the numbers, and this is what they found. If Ford just maintained the planned hike to $15 an hour, minimum wage workers who work 40 hours a week would take home $2,000 more before taxes. That means after tax, people would actually make around $700 more with a $1 minimum wage hike than they would with a wage freeze and Ford's tax credit.
Our plan for the people is to cut hospital wait times. We're going to open up 15,000 new long-term care beds over the next 5 years and 30,000 new beds over the next 10 years.
So Ford has not said how much he expects that to cost, but the idea was initially developed under the previous leader, Patrick Brown, and the way he priced it out seems unbelievably thrifty. The NDP estimates it'll cost $140,000 per bed. The Liberals set their price at $132,000 per bed, and the Progressive Conservatives just $5,133 per bed. Pulling off savings like that would be pretty darn impressive.
I am not going to introduce a carbon tax.
Okay, so right now Ontario has a cap and trade system, which means that the government has set a limit on the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that can be produced. That's the cap. But obviously, some companies emit more than others, and that's where the trade part comes in. Companies can buy and sell credits that allow them to emit a certain amount. Ontario doesn't have a carbon tax, or at least not yet. Back at the end of 2016, the federal government introduced its National Climate Change Strategy, the Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate Change. As part of this plan, provinces had until the end of 2018 to implement their own carbon pricing systems. But if provinces fail to do that, then the federal government comes in and imposes a carbon tax for them.
The government proposes that the price on carbon pollution should start at a minimum of $10 per tonne in 2018, rising by $10 each year to $50 per tonne in 2022.
So, can Doug Ford scrap the cap and trade system and not impose a carbon tax? No. What he could do is take the federal government to court over it, which is what Saskatchewan's looking into, But that's not anywhere in his plan. Let's say somehow he's able to do this. Scrapping the cap and trade system and not implementing a carbon tax would mean that the province would lose out on nearly $10 billion in revenue. Brown, for example, planned to scrap the current system and introduce a carbon tax, and then use the revenue for tax cuts. But back to Ford. He's going to lose out on that revenue, and this is all in addition to his promise to cut spending by $6 billion a year.
I don't believe, that's not my vocabulary. I believe in driving efficiencies, respecting the taxpayers.
Hey, I am all for efficiency, but I'd also like to know how Ford plans to reduce spending and lower taxes while simultaneously committing billions of dollars to improve healthcare, transit, mental health services, and lowering the cost of hydro, all while working towards balancing the budget. And this is a little PSA that the Ontario election is on June 7th, so get out and vote.